It's the Chronicles of a Gooner, and we are live. On today's show, we're going to reflect on Tottenham's collapse in the Super Cup final. We'll get into that. We're also going to talk about Tony Adams and Alexander Zinchenko's comments regarding Mikel Arteta and the Arsenal. So we've got plenty to get into, something a little bit different from the usual transfer chat, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it anyway. Thanks for being with us. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner pod. Hey, everybody. How are we doing? Welcome back to the pod. Good to see plenty of you with us bright and early on this Thursday morning. And we've got a fair bit to get into. We'll start with Spurs last night in the Super Cup final. They ended up losing it on penalties, having led by 2-0 and having looked at one stage like they were going to cruise to lifting the trophy. And listen, people will say that the Super Cup is a glorified friendly. I don't see it like that. I think the Super Cup is something that you want to add to your history if you can. Obviously, you need to win one of the two top European Cups, because obviously the Conference League exists now to be able to sort of participate in that final. I think a lot of people going into the game probably thought that Tottenham were going to get absolutely annihilated by a Paris Saint-Germain side who were brilliant in the latter stages of the Champions League, especially. Look, they didn't start great. You know, it's fair to say. We played them, didn't we, in October in the league phase of the Champions League. And we made really, really light work of them at the Emirates Stadium without really getting out of second gear. But as the tournament went on, they got better and better under Luis Enrique. They kind of really captured the imagination of a lot of people by playing this really exciting and flair-full type of brand, which I just thought was brilliant. And in the end, they had too much for us. They beat us. They went to the final. They won the final convincingly. And Paris Saint-Germain have been well regarded ever since and have been, in most people's estimations, the best team in Europe. A team that people said could go on and be, you know, the real dominant force for the next sort of 4 or 5 years because of the age of so many of their key players and because they've got Luis Enrique, a very accomplished coach, at the helm of it. You know, they've been brilliant. So a lot of people assumed that going into this game, they were going to completely wipe the floor with Tottenham. But what I think a lot of people forgot was that PSG, who were involved at the Club World Cup, who had gone all the way to the final, obviously lost that final to Chelsea, they haven't been back for very long since then. If I'm not mistaken, I think they've only had a week back in training. Someone told me that this was their first kind of pre-season game. I wouldn't class it as a pre-season game, but their first game post the Club World Cup. So you can understand why they weren't quite at the races. But in the end, they found a way because they've got incredible quality. They've got lots and lots of talent. They've got lots of depth within the squad. And at the end of the day, they were able, as I say, to claw their way back into the game. And in the end, they won it on penalties because, again, they've got superior quality to the opposition that they played on this particular day. So, yeah, look, you've got to give PSG immense credit for what they did. But you've also got to factor in the circumstances around them going into this game. For Tottenham, like if you're a Tottenham fan, this must feel really, really Spursy, right? You're on your way to winning another European trophy, to getting another one to stick in that cabinet, You're buzzing. You've performed really well. You've completely nullified a very, very good PSG side. You've scored at the other end of the pitch, showing that you've got a threat. Very effective Spurs side from set pieces, which is the complete opposite of Ange Postecoglou's Spurs side. And Thomas Frank's team, I thought, displayed an ability and showed it against us, by the way, in pre-season, to kind of sit behind the ball in a really good structure and make themselves very, very difficult to beat. Now, you could say some positive things, I suppose, about Ange Postecoglou's team, but what you could never say was that defensively you'd ever trust them. Well, I think over the course of this season, Tottenham fans will start to trust Thomas Frank in that side of things and in that sense, because his teams are very solid. He never went, oh, well, you know what, I'm a Spurs manager now rather than a Brentford manager, and so I have to be more attack-minded. Maybe the fact that they were playing PSG kind of gave him the ability to kind of discard the Tottenham way, if you like. But I think he is someone that that's his way. You know, he will be more cautious than other managers. He'll certainly be more cautious than Ange Postecoglou was. If you're a Spurs fan, there are some good things to take. Like the structure for most of the game was really good. They were solid for most of the game. They had PSG, I think as Thomas Frank put it post-match, where they wanted them for 80 minutes. But if you crumble and collapse like that, it is going to hurt. And then you go to penalties and you lose on penalties, it's going to hurt. It's going to sting. And I just think, and this is going to come into the conversation when we discuss the other two major topics that we've got today, which is Tony Adams' comments with regards to Mikel Arteta, Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard, and the extracts from Alexander Zinchenko's book that seem to have created quite the reaction. When we get into those topics, this same point I'm about to make is going to apply. Everybody's so desperate to be proven right, kind of one way or the other, right? Like you can take from both sides, you can assess something from a much more kind of middle ground. And I think if I were a Tottenham fan, obviously I'd be disappointed with what happened last night. Obviously, you'd have to take it on the chin, the Spursy shouts and all the banter that's going to come your way. But there are a good few things that Spurs fans can take away from that performance that should make them believe that they'll at the very least be more competitive next season. Yes, it's Spursy, but it isn't the end of the world, really. I don't think. I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave it a little fist pump when PSG pulled one back because it was Spurs, and you kind of had that feeling that they could end up throwing it all away. When the second one went in, there was a roar in the Symeou living room, I have to say that. And when Spurs lost on penalties, it was laughter more than anything else. So, yeah, really, really enjoyed the outcome. Didn't enjoy the process, if you like, of the game because Tottenham did look in control and look very, very comfortable for large periods of time. So, yeah, interesting stuff. But look, PSG, European Super Cup winners, deserve to be that. I think people will sort of call them lucky. I think Luis Enrique said after the game that actually they didn't deserve to win the Super Cup, and he's probably right. Based on the kind of balance of the game. But I think if you're a PSG fan, you take into consideration what your preseason's been like or the lack of preseason that you've had, very, very short period of time back in training, no games. And you go, look, even under those circumstances, against Premier League opposition, against a side that have had a full preseason with the vast majority of their players available throughout, you look at that and you go, actually, the fact that we were able to kind of dig deep and find a way, and the fact that our squad was able to help us and support us and aid us to getting over the line, that's a positive. That's how I would look at that if I was a PSG fan. But again, opinions don't have to be so binary, man. And we're going to come on to that when we talk about our next topic as well, because I feel like some of the reaction online, and listen, I got to be honest, in the last, I want to say month, I've kind of tried to limit how much time I spend on social media, kind of reading reactions to things, because I've got my opinion. My opinion is my opinion. Those who listen to the pod know my opinions and understand the context around my opinions and where they come from and how I get to those opinions, because I like to think that I explain it. That does mean at times that I ramble on. I know that. But I do explain my opinions in full, and I try and give you guys my full thought process. So social media for me, I'm getting, look, I'm still going to be on there, obviously. I still enjoy the fallout to a game or the fallout to a big incident or a big story, of course. But I'm trying to limit how much time I spend interacting with stuff, especially when I'm supposed to be with my family. Do you know what I mean? That's more important. So one thing I've realized lately is that everyone's like trying to prove each other wrong, and everyone's like so keen to do that they go early on stuff and whatever. Like, for example, I put a post out yesterday as I was watching that game, and I said, where is it? Let me just find it. Hold on. This was on X, and I said, early days under Thomas Frank, but look at the way Spurs defend and maintain a structure versus how easy they were to get at under Ange Postecoglou last season. And I think I posted that on about 75, 80 minutes or whatever it was. And obviously, Tottenham went on to crumble and collapse, and PSG ended up going on and winning the game on penalties. But my opinion still stands because it wasn't a knee-jerk opinion or me trying to get one up or trying to be proven right. I genuinely do think that Tottenham are a much more organised and structured side under Thomas Frank, and I think you're going to see that over the course of the season. Are they going to lose a little something in exchange for that in the attacking third? Who knows? Time will tell. But that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. Okay, let's take a short pause, and we're going to come back with some reaction to Tony Adams' comments before we discuss those extracts from Alexander Zinchenko's book, which have also made waves, haven't they, within the Arsenal fan base. So, yeah, lots to get into. Right, let's take a short pause, and we'll be back in a mo to get on with that.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Okay, let's have a listen, first of all, to what Tony Adams had to say with regards to Mikel Arteta, to Martin Odegaard, and to Declan Rice. And then we will react to it. Just make sure that you can hear this. Give me a thumbs up so that I know you can in the live chat.
You're not going to win the league with Odegaard as captain. I'm sorry.
Are you a fan of Arteta?
Oh, I think he... What? He's got a really big call to make this year. And for me, he hasn't done it. And the call is to make Declan Rice the captain. I think Declan is my kind of captain. And what it might do, it might free Odegaard up to play with a bit more freedom. Terry Venables did it. He took David Platt and he put me as captain. And Glenn Hoddle took me out and put Alan Shearer, which was a silly decision. But every now and again, as a manager, you have to put someone that reflects you, that reflects the football club, that you think you can actually take it to the next level.
Does he reflect Arteta?
I think he's better than Arteta. I think he's a winner. I think he's an Arsenal leader in the dressing room, around the training camp. He's got standards, he's got principles. I think big managers go, right, actually, you're my man now.
Did you say, I think Rice is better than Arteta? He's a winner, as in Arteta's not a winner?
Well, I think, yeah. Well, no, I'm just saying he's got an opportunity this year to actually turn into a winner. 5 years now. 5 years. He got great success at the start with a very defensive team. He got everyone behind the ball, basically, and we nicked the FA Cup. So going on and winning leagues, to win league titles, you have to be a Klopp. You have to be a Ferguson. You have to lead by example. You have to be a winner. You have to go about your business. And that reflects in your captain. And by making Odegaard a captain is a reflection of Arteta. And I can really see that. And I'm seeing Declan Rice as a captain, but I'm saying to Arteta, come on, step up now. It's your time to be a winning manager and a fantastic manager, because you're not going to win the league with Odegaard as captain. I'm sorry. It's going to be a rotation job, and you're going to get the same mentality of sometimes him and that one to come out and that one to go in and that one. You know, you've got someone in there that's going to play every game all season, that's going to encourage people to come in and do this and do that and lay the foundations of a title-winning team. Declan Rice can do that. Odegaard can't. Come on, Arteta, make him captain.
There we go. That was Tony Adams talking in front of a crowd over in Ireland. I'm not sure what the event was exactly, but he was talking about Odegaard. He was talking about Rice. He was talking about Mikel Arteta. We'll break that all down, right? Because, again, when I said earlier on in the show that not all opinions have to be binary, and I think you have to understand that people are entitled to their opinions, okay? I personally don't see Martin Odegaard being the captain as an issue. I think Declan Rice is a leader. I think Declan Rice leads anyway, whether or not he's wearing that armband. But I don't think it's an outrageous opinion for someone to believe that Declan Rice would make a better captain than Martin Odegaard. Martin Odegaard had an under-par season last time out. There's no getting away from that. He'll know that himself. He wasn't great. Declan Rice stepped up and became our most influential midfield player, and has been arguably the most influential midfield player since he arrived at the football club. He's been brilliant. He's been sensational. So I don't think it's wild for Tony Adams to prefer to see Declan Rice as the captain. I don't think that if I were Mikel Arteta right now, I would cause that issue by stripping it from Martin Odegaard and passing it on to Declan Rice. I don't think that's needed because, as I say, I think Rice can lead anyway and does lead anyway. But I don't think you should abuse Tony Adams or go crazy at Tony Adams because he has that opinion. As I say, it's not a wild opinion at all. Declan Rice will be regarded as by many as Arsenal's best midfield player. Some would even argue that he's Arsenal's best player. And for that reason, asking for him to be the captain is absolutely fine. Mikel Arteta is not going to stay up all night and ponder over the captaincy because Tony Adams said what he said. Mikel Arteta is his own man and he's going to make the decision that he wants to make. So I don't think I would make a massive change like that right now. I don't think it's necessary. I think if Martin Odegaard had another disappointing campaign and was unavailable for large periods of time, then maybe you would have to have a conversation and think about what the captaincy is going to look like. But Bukayo Saka's the vice captain, so it's much more likely that the armband gets passed on to Bukayo before it does to Declan Rice. Okay, so for me, like, am I bothered by this? Like, not really. Tony Adams is a legend. I love him. He was fantastic for our football club. He cares deeply for our football club. I respect his opinion and I want to hear his opinion. And I quite enjoyed listening to that perspective. But I think people have tried to turn it into something that it's not. Like, Tony Adams is not going to influence Mikel Arteta. Declan Rice and Martin Odegaard are not going to have a falling out in the dressing room because Tony Adams said what he said. Tony Adams is Mr. Arsenal himself. He has said his piece. That's it. Some people will agree with it. Some people will disagree with it. Okay. I don't think that it's crazy to say that Declan Rice should be the Arsenal captain because he is that good. He's that influential. He's vocal, etc., etc. And Martin Odegaard is coming off the back of a really disappointing season from an individual perspective. Part of that was down to injuries. Part of that was down to kind of struggling to get back to his best form after the injuries. Part of that was probably down to what he had to work with around him. But also Martin Odegaard has to take on some responsibility. Like, I guess, and I'll keep making this point throughout the pod today and probably in the months to come. People have opinions, right? Football is full of opinions. It's what makes football really, really special. It's what allows platforms like this one to exist and much bigger platforms than this one to exist. And I don't understand why we all have to kind of get into the whole point scoring thing, right? Tony Adams has got his opinion. That's his view. It's not a wild view. It's not a wild take. If it was a wild take, if it was completely crazy what Tony Adams was suggesting, like if he turned around and said, I don't know, I think that Kai Havertz should be the Arsenal captain, then I'd say that's crazy and we need to call that out. This is not crazy at all. The conversation about whether or not Martin Odegaard should be the captain was going on in Arsenal circles, forums, chat boxes throughout the duration of last season. And nothing has changed since last season because the new campaign hasn't started yet. So for that conversation and debate to still exist in the Arsenal world, it's not wild at all. Personally, I would not take the captaincy away from Martin Odegaard now. And I don't think that would help. And I think that if you are Tony Adams, who has seen that happen at international level, as he mentioned, where, you know, he was given the England captaincy and then it was taken away from him and passed on to someone else. He obviously thinks that that is okay and it doesn't really cause too much disruption or too many problems. And Tony Adams, I'm sure, right, has a very, very different outlook because he played in a totally different era with regards to what a captain should be. So you can understand the basis of his opinion and where that opinion is coming from. Again, it's not something I would do because I don't think changing the captaincy and taking it away from players that still are likely to play a huge role for your club in the coming season. I don't think that's particularly helpful. And I don't think you should do that unless you really have to. Like, we had to take it away from Aubameyang because of his disciplinary issues. We don't have to take it away from Martin Odegaard at this stage. People would argue that you do because his form hasn't been there, but we're going into a new campaign. We're going into a new season. And to take it off him now would be to kick him while he's down. And I don't think would do anybody any good. As I say, Declan Rice leads anyway. Declan Rice is one of the most vocal anyway. I don't think he needs to wear an armband to take on that responsibility. But I get where Big Tone is coming from. I do. I do understand it. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. And so, you know, that's kind of where I'm at on that. With regards to one point he made, though, he said like there's going to be a rotation there when he was talking about Odegaard. I don't think there's going to be a rotation there. I think Odegaard, when he's fit, is going to play. You know, I think that's how it's going to go. So this idea that he'll be in and out of the team, I don't think is accurate. I think he will be in the team more often than not. And then also, when he was asked if kind of he thinks that Mikel Arteta is not a winner, or he said that Rice is better than Arteta, I don't think he really thought that out, what he was saying. But look, Arteta hasn't won any of the major trophies yet. He's won the FA Cup, but he hasn't won the Champions League and he hasn't won the Premier League. And until he does that, there's always going to be that kind of debate and question mark around him, right? And that's fair again. Again, you might not agree with it. You might believe as an Arsenal fan that Mikel Arteta has done enough to warrant being given more time in this job and to warrant being given the opportunity to continue forward with this project. But if you don't think he is because you haven't seen the end result yet, or you're going to always be skeptical until you get to that point, again, I'm all right with it. That's your opinion. That's fine. I got to stop wasting. And everybody else has to as well, I'm telling you, because there will come a point where you'll realize it. You got to stop wasting your time pushing back on opinions that you disagree with. You have yours. They have theirs. That's fine. We all want Arsenal to do well. We all love the club. We all want to see the club succeed. That's what it's all about. Anyway, that's my take on the Tony Adams stuff. I don't think he's wild in what he's saying. Would I make that change of captaincy right now if it were me in charge? No, not at this stage. But, you know, if you want to talk about elite levels and you want to talk about competition, no captain should ever be safe from everything and anything. There should always be a bit of pressure. There should always be scrutiny. That's how you breed an elite environment. Now, there's a balance because if you create too much pressure, players can wilt under that. So you want to manage it and you want to find that sweet spot between the pressure and the competition, but also not creating a pressure so heavy that the players, you know, they can't operate under it. So, and look, people keep bringing up Tony Adams' management career and saying, well, what did Tony Adams achieve as a manager? Blah, blah, blah. Listen, that for me in this conversation is irrelevant. Tony Adams was a great captain at Arsenal. I've got immense respect for him. He's got an opinion that differs to the opinion of a lot of us, but that's absolutely fine. Again, just to finish off, I don't think he was wild in what he was saying at all. None of it was crazy. So, yeah, we'll leave it there. Right, going to take a short pause. And when we come back, we're going to discuss Alexander Zinchenko's comments. He's seen some, or he's published some extracts from his upcoming updated book. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how you guys feel about these, because again, a bit like the Tony Adams stuff, these have divided opinion. Let's get into that right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the pod. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already and you're joining us live on YouTube, be sure to leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. We're not a million miles away, you know, from that milestone of 45,000. We'd love to get there by the time the season starts. We're about 100 subs away. I mean, we should be able to do it with a concerted effort. So leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review. And if you'd like to go one further and become a patron, you can do so via the link in the description. Right. Let's have a look at some of Alexander Zinchenko's comments then, because he's described the season that he's just had as the worst season of his career. He says, a player who doesn't play is nothing. And these are extracts from a book that he's got up and coming. I think he's had a book out already, but I think this is an updated version of the autobiography from what I understand. James McNicholas has written the piece, and for some reason, he's getting a lot of crap online from people saying, why are you putting this stuff out? He's just reporting what is going into this book. It's not him saying it, right? So relax, people. Again, why are we always looking for a fight? Anyway, this is what he said. Unlike the year before, injuries were not to blame. He said he had a small problem with his calf that kept him out of action in the month of September, and a knock here and there, but I was otherwise fit for most of the campaign. He talked about having a specialist working with him who designed an exercise program specifically to work on his troublesome calf. He said he did a couple of sessions with me and came up with a gym regime that really sorted it out. It made a massive difference. But I was basically out of the starting 11 altogether, bar a few isolated matches. In pure personal terms, it was easily the worst season I ever experienced as a professional. A player who doesn't play is nothing. It's one thing when your body lets you down, that can happen. But going from one of the established players of the side to an unused sub is much harder to deal with. The sense of rejection you feel if your manager no longer believes in you can take the stuffing out of you, even if you're the most resilient guy on the planet. Sitting on the bench in the Premier League for a very generous wage packet is obviously still a privilege, the kind of problem that billions of people on this planet would swap their much tougher lives for in a heartbeat. Trust me, as a Ukrainian, I'm aware of that every single minute. But every footballer started playing because they love to play the game. A big part of your life is missing without it. Imagine this little boy who's dedicated his entire existence to becoming good at one particular thing and then finds at 28 that he's essentially no longer needed, that there are others who can do the job for him. It's not a nice feeling. He then went on to talk about an incident where one of his daughters was at the game and she mentioned that daddy's on the bench. Like the other daughter was looking for him and the other one told her sister, you know, daddy's on the bench, and that really upset him. He says, hearing that pained me a lot, made me feel ashamed. Quite grateful that the girls are not yet at an age where they're exposed to social media and don't have to read nasty stuff about their dad who can't get into the Arsenal team anymore. Then he was talking a little bit about Miles Lewis-Skelly, and he says he came in and he made the left-back position his. He's a special talent, such a good player. What he's done is unbelievable, really. And I told him, you've got everything. With your ability, you will be at the top level for 10 years or even more. You will become one of the best players in the world, not just in the club, but also in the national team. He said, I've heard stories of older players ganging up on youngsters to defend their territory, the sort of stuff you see in animal documentaries. I will never, ever undermine a teammate of mine. That is not me. I'm a professional and it's my job to get on with it. At Arsenal, we don't have many egos. Everyone understands their role, their duties and responsibilities. I'm not the guy that comes in and shows a bad face and spreads bad vibes. I still try to lighten the mood with a few jokes and make people smile. I tried my very best to stay positive inside. I did everything asked of me and was happy to play in any position for the subs 11 who stand in for the next opponents in training. Maybe some would react differently. They might feel slighted, having to pretend they're centre-backs when they're wingers, or the other way round. But not me. It doesn't bother me at all. I see it as an opportunity to learn and show what I will do, whatever is necessary to play my part. Zinchenko on Miles Lewis-Skelly, I mentioned some of the comments he previously made. He also then said, he plays in the same position as me, but I need to acknowledge his talent, applaud him, and help him, if only in a little way, to achieve his potential. He pushes me to become a better version of myself and to improve further. These are the demands at this level. If someone's better than you, you will be dropped. He then goes on to say there's no option but to keep your head straight and to look forward. Look, I mean, I don't really want to take too big an issue with this because Zinchenko is simply describing how he's feeling. You're promoting a book. You are going to give extracts to the media to get that book out there, to get people, interested and to generate and drum up some interest in the book. Okay, we get that, right? That's fine. The timing of it, at the point where we're about to try and sell him, by the looks of things, I'm not really sure that makes sense from his point of view. I don't think it helps Arsenal's cause in terms of trying to sell him, because he's clearly not happy at this moment in time. And therefore, if you're a club that's coming in to sign him, knowing he's not entirely happy, and he's not unhappy at the point where he's going to cause a shit show, Alexander Isak style, we know that. But, you know, if he's unhappy and you know that there's a real want to get out of there and you're a buying club, you're not going to get close to Arsenal's valuation at the first time of asking. In fact, you're probably going to try and long this out and drag this out as much as possible so that in the end, you know, you get the best possible deal. And Arsenal, knowing that the player probably, or knowing that everybody knows the player's unhappy, will probably have to compromise at some point, right? So I don't think it helps the club massively. But again, you know, Alexander Zinchenko hasn't said anything out of line. I quite like the fact that he's quite positive about Miles Lewis-Skelly, and I think he makes those points very clearly, because it's important not to be seen as bitter. Like, he isn't bitter towards Miles Lewis-Skelly. He's disappointed that the manager doesn't think he can do the job anymore. And I was having this back and forth with a friend yesterday on WhatsApp who said, you know, like, he needs to realize that he's not at that level anymore, and he's not necessarily good enough, and that's why he's not in the team. And I'm saying, yeah, fine. But if you're Alexander Zinchenko, like, are you going to believe that? Like, do you expect Alexander Zinchenko to believe within his own mind that he's no longer good enough? Because if he believes that he's no longer good enough to play at the highest level, well, he might as well just pack it in. He's not going to believe that, and that's fine for him not to believe that. And this is, again, comes back to that theme of today's podcast, which is two people can have two different opinions, and guess what? That's fine. Zinchenko believes he is good enough. Mikel Arteta obviously doesn't. He hasn't caused any problems behind the scenes based on what we're reading. We've never had any reports to the contrary to suggest that Alexander Zinchenko is a problem. In fact, he goes out of his way to make the point that he isn't an issue for anybody involved at Arsenal Football Club, and that actually he does his bit to lighten the mood. He does his bit to support his teammates. And he's obviously very, very respectful of the talent that Miles Lewis-Skelly has, which has ultimately seen him lose his place in the team. But listen, it's not just Lewis-Skelly, is it? Calafiori's ahead of him in the pecking order. There were times where Kivior was. There were times where Tomiyasu was. You know, there's times where Timbers played at left back. You know, there's a lot of players ahead of him now in the pecking order. So you can understand why he's feeling disappointed, frustrated. I don't know if I was him that I would have. I mean, again, you know, you want to get the updated book out and you want to sell it. So you're going to have to do a bit of PR. But I just, yeah, I don't think it really kind of helps his cause with Mikel. But at the same time, even though he has spoken out and discussed his feelings and the situation involving him and Arsenal at this moment in time, he hasn't crossed any lines. I've got no problem with it. But, you know, it does feel a little bit overly emotional. And I feel like those types of reflections are things that are better publicly communicated towards the end of your career when you're done. Like, once you leave Arsenal, say it, no problem, man. No one's going to have an issue. I just think the timing is a little bit awkward and is a little bit off. But yeah, again, Tony Adams has got a different opinion to a lot of people. He's entitled to have that. So is Alexander Zinchenko. If you believe that Alexander Zinchenko in his own head should understand and be okay with not playing, then you don't understand the mentality of an elite level athlete. An elite level athlete, you know, gets there in part because of talent, but also because of lots of other factors, confidence being one of them, belief in your own ability being one of them. And he's obviously got that stuff, which is why he can't take not being in the team. I get it. It's fine. Virendra says the timing is not the best. Not so much what he said. Completely agree with that. Completely agree with that. Poster Boy says he needs to leave. Yeah, he does. And, you know, there are a number of clubs said to be interested in him. Whether that's going to develop into something or not, we don't know yet. We hope it does, because I think it's the best outcome for everybody at this moment in time. But then we've also seen stuff, haven't we, over the last few days where, you know, it's kind of been reported that Zinchenko is quite happy to run down his contract and stay for another year. Well, if you're on that kind of money, then why wouldn't you be happy to run down your contract? Again, we got to start seeing things from all points of view, because only then can you make sense of them. If Arsenal don't get a fee, if Zinchenko doesn't find a club that he wants to join and a move never materializes, you know, he might bang on about wanting to play and all the rest of it, and how a player that doesn't play is nothing. But we'll see then, won't we, if he picks the financial reward over going somewhere and playing. And then you're going to understand whether those words are really and truly heartfelt and sincere, or if those words are part of how he's feeling at the time, but there's going to be maybe an element of hypocrisy to the decision that he ultimately makes on his future. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Right, look, we're going to take a really, really short pause, and then I'll take a few of your questions before we sign out. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Welcome back to the pod. Into the final section now we go. There's lots of reaction to what Zinchenko's had to say. There's lots of conversation ongoing in the chat box about it. Let's see. Lots of reaction to the Tony Adams stuff still coming through. Listen, like, so for example, Juan Lewis, if my mouse decides to work, there we go, says, I cringed every time Tony Adams and Thierry Henry speak about Arsenal. I remember once on this pod having a bit of a moan about something that Thierry Henry said. And that was around the time where we were linked with that major takeover from Daniel Ek, who never really had the money to do it and never really got anywhere close to it. But he'd sort of gone out and recruited the support of some Arsenal legends, and one of them was Thierry Henry. And I remember listening to what Thierry was saying at the time and thinking, like, again, you're entitled to your opinion and you're entitled to your view. But when you've aligned yourself with a guy that's trying to take over the club, it's understandable why you might be a little bit more negative than you normally would be. And that's because you want to highlight the problems at Arsenal. You want to stir up that fan frustration, because that you think would help with the potential takeover. Thierry Henry said some scathing things about Arsenal, some critical things about Arsenal ever since his involvement has gone away in terms of that sort of connection with Daniel Ek, who was seemingly interested in Arsenal. I'm fine with him criticizing, because I don't think it's coming from a place of agenda anymore. And again, I might not always agree with everything he says, but I'm fine with him saying it, and I'm willing to listen, because I have immense and huge respect for someone like Thierry Henry, for everything that he's achieved in his career and achieved at Arsenal Football Club. I think with Tony Adams, the reason I'm much more open-minded and to what Tony Adams has had to say, rather than what we've heard from Thierry Henry in the past, is that Tony Adams has got no agenda. Why does Tony Adams seek to drum up a particular feeling or sort of contribute to a certain narrative? I don't think he does. Tony Adams just wants to see Arsenal win. So I don't think the two cases are the same. But yeah, look, again, everyone's entitled to their opinion. Afsar says, do you think Zinny dug his own grave with his comments and now will never play for Arsenal again? No, I don't. I don't, because I don't think he said anything that crossed the line. I don't think he went too far. I don't know that the timing of it was right. As I've said, I don't know that if I was him, I'd want that out in the public domain right now. I don't think Arsenal will want that out in the public domain, because, of course, they want to move the player on. So I don't think it works for everybody, but I don't think it's something that you can't recover from. And I don't think it's something that the club will take such an issue with, that he'll now be cast aside. If there's a use for Zinchenko and he can benefit us in some way, I still think Arsenal and Arteta will be fine with using him. They've known each other for a long time. They worked together at Manchester City. I don't think that relationship is completely broken based on these comments. So Francis says, Harry, you said our weakness is selling, and this Zinny thing is showing that. We are allowing players like Zinny to dictate how long they want to stay. Chelsea, who sell good, don't allow that. Why do we? Yeah, I mean, maybe we need to get a bit more ruthless. You know, you've seen PSG with the Donnarumma situation, right? They've got this goalkeeper who was outstanding last season. He's undoubtedly one of the best in the world. He don't want to sign a new contract on the terms that PSG have offered. And therefore, they don't want to let him run down his contract. So they've just gone, right, you're excluded from the group, knowing that that's probably going to push Donnarumma into a situation where he has to compromise and he has to make a move. And, you know, there's a part of me that wishes Arsenal would be this ruthless with some of our players. Now, it's not nice for the player. And there'll be people who argue back and say, well, we're Arsenal and we don't do that sort of thing. But that's why these clubs get the results and outcomes that they do, because they are ruthless. They are obsessed with winning. They're obsessed with clearing the decks in order to be able to fund the business that they think is going to make the difference. And they will not be left with their hands tied behind their backs based on business they did in the past. Again, on the Zinni thing, I don't blame us for signing him when we did for what we did, because I think he played a big part in the elevation of the football club. We've talked about this before. But, you know, right now, like, do you isolate him in order to make him move? Maybe a more ruthless football club does that. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I think, you know, maybe that willingness, or that unwillingness, I should say, to be ruthless at times is partly why we're not as good as sellers as some of the others. Jid says, can you do an episode where you break down the squad game and how you believe Arteta should manage his squad in a way that will keep players happy enough to be motivated at any time they're called up to play? Please base it on reality and how historically players have dealt with limited appearances and game time, as opposed to wishful thinking or what makes sense in fans' minds. Yeah, I mean, I can paint a very sort of generic picture of how I think squad rotation will look for us. Yeah, that's fine. Let me make a note of it. Why not? But like, this is where people need to stop with the assumptions, right? Like, for example, when you called me up, Jid, previously on something I'd said about squad rotation, and I'd said something along the lines of, you know, well, Bukayo Saka doesn't have to start and finish every game now because of the options that we have, whereas in the past that wasn't the case. You said, well, Bukayo's not going to be happy playing 20 games. I never said he's going to play 20 games. You know, he could start 60 games, finish 30 of them. The 30 of them in which we need him towards the back end of the game. Because what people don't understand about squad rotation is, when we talk about squad rotation and the ability to kind of impact games from the bench, we're talking about football in a very different state to what it was 10, 15 years ago, right? You used to only be able to make 3 changes. Now you can make 5. You can change half of your outfield 11 in a game. And when you talk about someone like Saka in particular, who a lot of people's frustrations have been that he's playing too many minutes. If you take 10 minutes off of him because we're winning 2-0, and then the following week, you take another 15 minutes off of him. And then let's say in the third game, you can't because the game's finally poised. And the same in the fourth one. But then on the 5th week, again, you get him off 15, 20 minutes early. All of a sudden, you've saved, 10, 20 plus the other 15. You've saved, 35, 40 minutes for Bukayo Saka. Do you see what I mean? Like, it's not just about, he can't start. That's not what rotation looks like in the modern game, because we've got 5 subs available to us. So if you give him 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and 10 minutes in a couple of weeks later, you end up in a situation where you've saved 30 minutes. And all of a sudden, his playing time comes down. And when you look at it at the end of the season, he's still playing week after week. He's still got that rhythm. He's not going to lose that because he's in and out of the team, but you're just managing his minutes a little bit better. And equally, if you're someone like Ethan Nwaneri, who is still developing and still on the right path, and he gets 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, all of a sudden he's played a half of football. Now, he might want that progress to be quicker. I understand that. But that's how you build people up. That's how you save others. I think that's the way to do it. That's how you do it. The N16 says, Harry, will you be doing a watch along on Sunday's game? I will not. I'm going to be at Old Trafford on Sunday. So as long as there is no arrival in the Symeou household between now and then, I will be at Old Trafford. So I'll bring you a short piece of content from Old Trafford, and then we'll reflect on the game in detail on Monday morning's show. So yeah, looking forward to getting back to analysing Premier League football. Okay, I am going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you're listening on Apple, leave us a review. If you're listening on Spotify, please do the same. And if you'd like to go one further and become a patron, you can do so via the link below. Thanks again for joining me. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a wonderful Thursday. Goodbye.